My name is Victoria Hayes. I'm 58 years old, a retired construction engineer and Army veteran. For the past 15 years, since my husband Michael died, I've been raising our son Gerald alone. I thought I did a good job. I was wrong. My military service taught me patience, strategy, and the importance of gathering intelligence before making decisions. For years in the Army, mostly stationed at Fort Bragg, doing logistics coordination. It wasn't glamorous work, but it taught me how to plan, how to observe, and how to stay calm under pressure. Skills that would prove crucial later, in ways I never imagined. When Michael passed in 2009 from cancer, Gerald was just 15. It took him fast, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. I remember promising him at the hospital that I'd make sure our boy grew up to be a decent man, someone he could be proud of. Looking back now, I realize I might have been too easy on him, too protective, too willing to give him everything without making him earn it. The thing about losing your spouse when you have a teenage son is that you want to compensate for what he's lost. You want to be both parents rolled into one. Michael was always the one who set the firm boundaries, who made Gerald do his chores, who insisted he get a part-time job in high school. After he died, I focused on just keeping him stable, keeping him in school, making sure he knew he was loved. Maybe that was my first mistake. I spent 20 years working construction after the Army, building office buildings and shopping centers around the Chicago area. The work was hard, but honest, good union job with decent benefits. After Michael died, I worked overtime constantly to pay for Gerald's college education. Business administration at State University cost me about $40,000 over 4 years. But I was so proud when he graduated in 2021 and got a job at a marketing firm downtown. During college, I started noticing some things about Gerald that should have been red flags. He was always talking about get-rich-quick schemes, always convinced he was going to strike it big somehow. Bitcoin was just starting to get popular, and Gerald was obsessed with stories of people making millions overnight. He'd show me articles about 20-year-olds becoming millionaires from cryptocurrency trading. "Mom, this is the future," he'd tell me during his junior year. "Traditional jobs are for suckers. Smart money is in crypto." I tried to explain that most of those stories ended badly. That for every person who made a fortune, thousands lost their shirts. But Gerald was convinced he was smarter than everyone else. "You don't understand, Mom. You're from a different generation. This is how wealth gets built now." After graduation, Gerald moved out and got his own apartment with his girlfriend, Patricia Morrison. She seemed nice enough, worked as a social media coordinator for some marketing company. They'd been together about 2 years when they showed up at my place on a Sunday afternoon in March. I was working in my small garden when I saw them pull up. Gerald was driving a car I didn't recognize, a newer model Honda that looked like it cost more than what a marketing assistant should be able to afford. Patricia was dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. "Mom, we have incredible news," Gerald said as they walked at my driveway. Both of them grinning like they'd won the lottery. We sat on my back porch, and Gerald announced their engagement. Patricia showed off a diamond ring that caught the afternoon sunlight and threw sparkles across my weathered deck furniture. "Congratulations, son," I said, genuinely happy for them. "Your father would be so proud to see you settling down with such a wonderful woman." But even as I said it, something felt off. Gerald seemed nervous underneath his excitement, like he was performing happiness rather than feeling it. And Patricia kept checking her phone, scrolling through what looked like social media apps. "We're planning a September wedding," Patricia said, finally looking up from her phone. "We want something really special, something we'll remember forever." That's when Gerald's expression changed. Got more serious, more calculating. The same look he used to get as a kid when he was about to ask for something he knew I might say no to. "Mom, we need to talk about something important. We've been planning this wedding, and between the venue, catering, photographer, flowers, everything else, we need $20,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $20,000. That was more than I made in 4 months of pension and Social Security combined. Here's the thing, though. I wasn't poor. Not even close. When Michael died, his life insurance policy paid out $50,000. Combined with our savings and some investments I'd made over the years, I had about $85,000 sitting in a separate account that Gerald knew nothing about. I'd been living modestly, keeping that money as a safety net, but also as a teaching tool. See, my military training taught me the value of operational security. Sometimes the best strategy is to let your opponent underestimate your capabilities while you gather intelligence about their true intentions. I wanted to see what kind of man Gerald had become when he thought his mother was struggling financially. So, I decided to test him. I lied about my financial situation. "Gerald, son," I said, making my voice sound worried and apologetic. My pension is only $1,200 a month with the house payment, utilities, food, medicine for my arthritis. I just don't have that kind of money. The reaction was immediate and ugly. "What do you mean you don't have money?" Gerald exploded, jumping up from his patio chair so fast it nearly tipped over. "You've had 15 years to save something. What do you spend it all on?" Patricia immediately joined the attack. "Victoria, with all due respect, other mothers make sacrifices for their children's weddings. My mom already promised us $5,000, and she makes less than you do." I tried to stay calm, drawing on my military training. In the Army, we learned that emotional reactions in tense situations usually made things worse. "Listen, I understand this is important to you both. Maybe I can help with $5,000 if you give me some time to arrange a loan." $5,000? Gerald's voice went up an octave. "Did you hear that, Patricia? My own mother, who claims she loves me more than her own life, offers me scraps for the most important day of my existence." The contempt in his voice was something I'd never heard before. This wasn't the boy I'd raised with bedtime stories and Saturday morning pancakes. This was a stranger who saw me as nothing more than a source of money. Patricia pulled out her phone and started scrolling through what looked like wedding planning apps. "Gerald, my cousin Jessica, just spent $25,000 on her wedding last month. Her mother took out a second mortgage to make it happen." "Exactly," Gerald said, pointing at me like I was on trial. "Other mothers find a way. They make sacrifices. They don't make excuses." I kept my voice level. "Son, I've made sacrifices for you your entire life. I worked double shifts to pay for your college. I sold your father's tools to cover your textbooks and living expenses. That was your job as a mother." Gerald shot back. "I didn't ask to be born. If you decided to have kids, you accepted the responsibility that comes with it." 20 years of unconditional love reduced to an obligation. Every midnight feeding when he was a baby, every parent-teacher conference, every birthday party I threw by myself after Michael died. All of it dismissed as basic parental duty. Over the next 2 weeks, Gerald called me almost daily. Each conversation was more aggressive than the last, and I started recognizing patterns from my military experience. This was psychological warfare designed to break down my resistance through constant pressure. "Mom, the venue costs $8,000 just for rental," he told me during one call. "The catering for 150 people is another $7,000. We've already put deposits down." "Gerald, those numbers seem very high for your age group. Your father and I had a beautiful wedding for $500. "There's the problem," he snapped. "You're always comparing everything to your generation. Patricia deserves a princess wedding, not some cheap ceremony from the 1990s. Those words cut deep. Michael and I had been so happy at our simple wedding in St. Mary's Church. He looked handsome in his suit, and I wore a dress my sister had altered. We had about 50 people, mostly family, and celebrated afterward in the church basement with homemade cake and a local DJ. But we were surrounded by genuine love, not materialistic demands." "Gerald, don't talk about your father that way. Dad settled for less his whole life," he said with calculated cruelty. "He never got to travel, never had nice things, never lived anywhere but this boring suburb. Patricia isn't going to accept that kind of life." I hung up, my hands shaking with anger. How dare he speak about Michael like that? He had been happy with our life together. We took weekend trips to state parks, had quiet dinners at home, built a garden in the backyard where he grew tomatoes and herbs. He found joy in simple things, in watching Gerald grow up in our Saturday morning routine of coffee and crossword puzzles. But apparently to Gerald, that wasn't enough. That was settling. During this time, I started paying closer attention to Gerald's social media presence. Patricia had tagged him in several posts about their engagement, and I was shocked by what I saw. Photos of expensive dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford, weekend trips to resorts, designer clothes, and accessories. Gerald was living a lifestyle that his marketing job couldn't possibly support. In one post, Patricia had written, "My fiancé knows how to treat a queen." Another amazing weekend in Napa Valley. Hashtag blessed living my best life. Hashtag future hubby spoils me. The photos showed them at wineries that charge $200 for tastings, staying at hotels that cost more per night than I spent on groceries in a month. Gerald was wearing a watch I didn't recognize. Looked expensive. Definitely not something he could afford on his salary. I started wondering where the money was coming from. The answer came during one of our phone arguments. Gerald was pressuring me about the wedding timeline, getting more agitated than usual. "Mom, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. Patricia's friends are all getting these Instagram perfect weddings. Her social media followers expect something spectacular. Since when do strangers on the internet get to decide how you spend your money? It's not about strangers, Mom. It's about building our brand, our image. Patricia's growing her influencer presence, and this wedding is going to be content for months." That's when it clicked. This wasn't about love or commitment. This was about social media performance, about creating content for followers, about maintaining an image they couldn't afford. "Gerald, are you going into debt to maintain this lifestyle?" The silence on the other end of the line lasted too long. "Mom, that's not your business." But his defensive tone told me everything I needed to know. "Son, if you're having financial problems, we can talk about it honestly. But I won't be manipulated into paying for a show." "A show?" Gerald's voice turned ice cold. "My wedding to the woman I love is a show to you. You're wedding to a woman who seems more interested in creating social media content than building a marriage." "Yes." That's when Gerald hung up on me. I didn't hear from Gerald for 3 days after that phone call. In the Army, we called this the quiet before the storm. It usually meant the enemy was regrouping, planning their next move. I decided to use this time for reconnaissance. I contacted Harold Thompson, a lawyer I'd known since my construction days. Harold had helped me with Michael's estate paperwork and some contract issues over the years. He was straight-talking, no nonsense. The kind of attorney who told you what you needed to hear rather than what you wanted to hear. "Victoria, what you're describing sounds like financial extortion," Harold said when I explained a situation in his downtown office. "The escalating demands, the emotional manipulation, the threats about cutting contact. That's not normal family disagreement. Harold, I want to be prepared. My gut tells me this is going to get worse." He leaned back in his leather chair, studying me with the same expression he'd worn when reviewing Michael's will. "You think your son might escalate beyond verbal pressure?" "I think my son is desperate about something he's not telling me, and desperate people make dangerous decisions." Harold advised me to start documenting everything. Phone calls, visits, text messages. Illinois is a one-party consent state for recording conversations. If Gerald threatens you or makes demands, you can legally record it without his knowledge. I took his advice and invested in some discreet recording equipment. My military training had included basic surveillance techniques, so I knew how to set up devices that wouldn't be easily noticed. Over the next week, I got a masterclass in my son's true character. Gerald called me almost daily, and each recorded conversation revealed more of his desperation and entitlement. But I also started my own investigation. I created fake social media accounts to monitor Gerald and Patricia's online activity more closely. What I found was disturbing. Gerald's Instagram showed a lifestyle of constant luxury. Expensive restaurants 3 or 4 times a week. Designer clothes that cost more than my monthly pension. Weekend trips to places I'd never been able to afford, even when I was working full-time. But the real revelation came when I dug deeper into his cryptocurrency activities. One night, Gerald had posted a screenshot of what looked like a trading app, bragging about a huge win on Ethereum. But if you look closely at the numbers in the background, you could see his overall balance was deeply negative. He was showing off a small gain while hiding massive losses. I started cross-referencing his posts with cryptocurrency price movements, using my engineering background to analyze patterns. Gerald was posting about his wins whenever crypto prices went up, but there were long silent periods that corresponded with market crashes. The math was ugly. Based on what I could piece together from his social media activity and some discreet inquiries through Harold's investigator contacts, Gerald had lost approximately $17,000 over the past 8 months. The wedding money wasn't about starting a new life with Patricia. It was about covering gambling debts disguised as investment losses. Armed with this information, I decided to accelerate my timeline. But first, I wanted one more test of Gerald's character. My neighbor, Barbara Clean, had been struggling financially since her husband died 2 years ago. Her granddaughter, Lucy, was graduating from nursing school and needed a laptop for her new job at the local hospital. Barbara had mentioned to me that she was trying to save up the $500 needed, but was having trouble on her fixed income. I gave Barbara the money as a gift. She cried when I handed her the cash, blessing me repeatedly and calling me an angel. Seeing her relief and gratitude reminded me why I'd always believed in helping people when you can. What I didn't expect was how quickly Gerald would find out about it. He stormed into my house the next evening without knocking, his face red with anger. "Mom, I know you gave $500 to that old woman next door," he said, pointing toward Barbara's house. "You claim you don't have money for your own son's wedding, but you're giving handouts to strangers." I had been expecting this reaction, so I had the recording equipment ready. "Barbara isn't a stranger, Gerald. She's been my neighbor for 10 years. Her granddaughter needed help with a laptop for work. I don't care about some old lady I've never met," he screamed, his voice echoing off my living room walls. "You're my mother. Your money should go to me first." Patricia was right behind him, equally furious. "Victoria, this proves you've been lying about your financial situation. If you can give away $500 without thinking about it, you can help us with the wedding." "It was $500, not $20,000, I said calmly. "Every dollar counts when you're claiming to be broke," Gerald shot back. "Besides, that money could have gone toward the wedding fund." The conversation escalated quickly from there. Gerald started demanding to know where else I was wasting money. Patricia began lecturing me about family priorities and loyalty. The pressure was building, and I could see Gerald getting more agitated by the minute. "Mom, I'm done playing games with you," he said finally. "I need an answer by tomorrow night. $15,000. That's my final offer." The reduction from $20,000 to $15,000 was supposed to sound generous, but I could hear the desperation underneath. He needed money fast, and he was willing to negotiate. "And if I can't come up with it?" I asked. Gerald's expression turned cold, and he stepped closer to me in a way that felt threatening. "Then I guess we'll know exactly where I stand with you, won't we, Mom?" The way he said it, the way he invaded my personal space, triggered every alarm bell my military training had installed in my head. This was about to turn physical. They left that night, but I knew Gerald would be back. In the Army, we learned to read body language to recognize when someone was preparing for violence. Gerald had crossed that line. I spent the next day making sure all my recording equipment was functional and positioned strategically around the house. I also called Harold to let me know the situation was escalating. "Victoria, if you feel physically threatened, call 911 immediately. Don't try to handle this alone." But I thought I could manage one more confrontation. I was wrong. Gerald and Patricia returned the next evening, and this time Gerald's demeanor was different, colder, more calculated. "Mom, we need to settle this tonight," he said, sitting on my couch, but keeping his posture aggressive. "Patricia and I have made our final decision. $15,000 by tomorrow, or we're cutting contact permanently." I activated the hidden recorder and decided to play my final card. "Gerald, before we discuss money, I want to show you something." I pulled out the folder Harold had prepared with evidence of Gerald's cryptocurrency losses, bank statements, trading app screenshots, credit card bills showing cash advances. "What is this?" Patricia asked, looking confused. "Patricia, these are records showing that Gerald has lost $17,000 over the past 8 months trading cryptocurrency. The wedding money isn't for your future together. It's to cover his gambling debts." Patricia grabbed the papers, her hands shaking as she read. Her expression changed from confusion to disbelief to absolute fury. "Gerald, you lost $17,000 gambling and didn't tell me." Gerald tried to lie. "Patricia, it's not gambling. It's investing. And I can make it all back." "Make it back with what money?" she screamed. With money you're extorting from your mother. I'm not extorting anyone, Gerald shouted, jumping up. I'm asking my mother to help her son in a crisis. That's when I revealed my final secret. I walked to my desk and pulled out the bank statements from my hidden savings account. Gerald, there's something else you need to know. I showed them both the documentation. $85,000 in a savings account I'd maintained since Michael died. The silence in the room was deafening. You had this money the entire time, Patricia whispered. For 15 years, I kept it secret because I wanted Gerald to learn the value of work, of earning his own way in life. Gerald stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. Then his expression shifted to something I'd never seen before. Pure homicidal rage. You let me beg, he said quietly. You let me get desperate. You let me ruin my relationship with Patricia. Gerald, I tested your character. You failed. Patricia stood up from the couch. Gerald, this is over. I can't marry someone who lies to his mother and lies to me. Patricia, don't leave. Gerald pleaded. Mom, give her the money. You can fix this. No, Gerald. I'm not giving you 1 cent. And tomorrow morning, all this evidence goes to the police. That's when Gerald completely lost control. You manipulative bitch, he screamed, moving toward me with his fists clenched. You ruined my life with your stupid test. Gerald, your choices ruined your life. The first punch caught me in the stomach. I doubled over, and the second hit my ribs with a sound like breaking kindling. I fell backward into my coffee table, and Gerald kept hitting me. Patricia was screaming, but not for him to stop. She was yelling at him to leave before someone called the police. I don't remember much after that. I woke up in Chicago General Hospital with 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, and bruises covering half my torso. Barbara Clean had heard the commotion and called 911 when she saw Gerald and Patricia leaving my house in a hurry. The paramedics found me unconscious on my living room floor. Harold was at the hospital when I woke up. Victoria, we have enough evidence to put Gerald away for a very long time. The police investigation moved quickly. They had medical evidence, witness testimony from Barbara, and most importantly, the recordings of Gerald's threats and demands. But Gerald made one final mistake. He came to the hospital the next day to try intimidating me into not pressing charges. Mom, this was all just a misunderstanding. You fell and hit your head. That's your story. What he didn't know was that Harold had arranged for police recording equipment in my room. Gerald, you hit me repeatedly because I wouldn't give you money to cover your gambling debts. I never touched you, he hissed, leaning close to my hospital bed. And if you tell anyone different, you'll have a worse accident next time. That recording sealed his fate. Gerald was arrested 3 days later at his office. His coworkers watched as police led him away in handcuffs, destroying what was left of his professional reputation. The trial was straightforward. The evidence was overwhelming. Medical records, recordings, witness testimony, financial documents proving his desperation. Patricia testified against him, explaining how he had manipulated her into pressuring me for money under false pretenses. She had broken off their engagement immediately after learning the truth. Gerald was sentenced to 5 years in prison for assault on an elderly person, extortion, and making criminal threats. The judge was particularly harsh about the fact that he had attacked his own mother. During sentencing, several of my neighbors attended to show support. Barbara Clean sat in the front row, holding my hand during the victim impact statement I read to the court. The veteran community also rallied around me. Members of my old American Legion post started checking on me regularly, making sure I had help with groceries and household maintenance while I recovered. After the trial, I made a decision about the $85,000. I donated every penny to the National Elder Abuse Prevention Foundation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Money intended to teach my son about earning respect instead went to protect other seniors from people exactly like him. 6 months later, I've settled into a new routine. My ribs healed completely, though cold weather still makes them ache sometimes. Barbara and I have become close friends, sharing coffee most mornings and looking out for each other. Her granddaughter, Lucy, sends me updates about her nursing career. She's doing excellent work at the hospital using the laptop I helped buy for classes she's taking to advance her certification. I think about Michael often, wondering what he would have thought about everything that happened. I believe he would have supported my decision to hold Gerald accountable. He always said, "Real love sometimes requires tough consequences." Gerald will be eligible for parole in 3 years. When that time comes, the restraining order will still protect me. He won't be allowed within 500 feet of my home or workplace. Some people have asked if I'll ever forgive him, if I'll try to rebuild our relationship when he gets out. The answer is no. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal. I'm 58 years old, and I've learned that dignity and self-respect matter more than blood relationships. I gave Gerald every opportunity to make different choices. He chose violence instead. If there are other mothers out there facing similar situations, adult children who feel entitled to your money, who threaten you when you don't comply, know that you have options. Document everything. Get legal help. Don't let anyone, even family, abuse you. The justice system worked exactly as it should have in my case. Gerald learned that actions have permanent consequences. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do as a parent is refuse to enable destructive behavior. My son chose his path. I chose mine. And I sleep peacefully knowing I made the right decision. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone you love is allowing them to face the full weight of their choices, even when it breaks your heart to watch them fall. I raised a son, but I refused to enable a monster. And that decision saved not just my dignity, but potentially the safety of every vulnerable person he might have victimized.